Being very entitled and controlling, narcissists have no difficulty stepping all over your personal boundaries. So that's why I put together an extensive video class called This Is Me. It has 25 videos, written documents, guided questions. I'm going to teach you how to have healthy boundaries. There's a link below, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. Today I want to dive into a very difficult topic with you, and that's the topic of evil as it relates to narcissism. And I want to show you how narcissism actually has an evil element that underlies all of it. Now, when we think in terms of stereotypes, when we think of a person that's just pure evil, we're really talking about people who are way down on the far end of narcissism, the malignant narcissist, the sociopath, the psychopath. These are individuals who have such a severe sense of immorality that it's typified by a total disregard for another person's basic humanity. In that far use of evil, these individuals are just cold-blooded. They'll prey upon another person's flaws or weaknesses or just their simple way of life. Evil individuals are intent upon destroying other individuals as a display of their own power. And it's both an illustration of a psychological dysfunction, and we can also talk about it in terms of its spiritual demise. They have no sense of connectedness to the things in life that are best and good. Now, let's pull back on that, though, on that hard stereotype, and recognize that just as narcissism is a pattern on a spectrum, so is evil. Some individuals can have elements of narcissism, that need for control, that gross insensitivity toward other individuals, and the manipulation, the haughtiness, portraying themselves in false kinds of terms. They can do that, but maybe in a lesser kind of way. And they also have some ingredients that might be considered to be positive. And so the same with evil. There are some individuals that are not that way all the time, but it can show up depending on the set of circumstances. By the way, ultimately, it's going to show up most in the midst of conflict. We could say that the motto of an evil individual is dominate or be dominated. And of course, you know which direction they're going to choose. Now, I want to see if I can pull out a type of working definition of evil so that it relates to those who are not necessarily all the way down on that farthest extreme, but yet we can see that that element is present in their life. And that working definition would be that evil exists when a person has an awareness of the prevailing moral and ethical code, but they deliberately choose to ignore it. Okay? And in other words, it's not just an instinct. It's not just a raw reaction, but these individuals know the difference between right and wrong, and they choose wrong. Okay? Can you go along with me on that? And as part of the definition of evil, we can also say that its goal is to kill the spirit of that person in front of them. So we can say that you can have the far extreme where it's just pervasive and it's just a defining feature, or we can say that some people will have what I refer to as evil in small doses. It's more episodic, okay? Now, in order for you to kind of get an idea of evil's influence on that highly narcissistic individual, I want to see if we can zero in on certain indicators that tell us that this is what's going on. Now, first, I've already alluded to this, but you know that a person has fallen prey to their own evil instincts when they derive pleasure by causing hurt or harm or pain in other individuals. Now, you just pause on that and think, nobody would think that way, would they? Well, narcissism is so into the whole notion of preserving oneself, even if it means that you portray a false narrative, that narcissists can be quite willing to say, well, if I have to build myself up in order to make myself better, and if it means that I have to diminish you, I'm willing to do that. I don't care if you have pain. Then we can take it a little bit further, and we can say that evil is shown when the person who does the damaging act toward another person actually tries to make the victim of their evil as being the troubled person, and in other words, you're the problem. If I did anything wrong, you set the whole thing up, and so they focus on that other person's deficiencies. Obviously, you can see that evil, another indicator, is illustrated when the anger of that individual is triggered by the other person's desire to have free choice. The evil person has such a need to be in control that when another person says, well, I just simply have a different preference, or I have different ideas or interpretation, I'd like to freely follow what I believe is wisest and best, it's like, around me, you don't get to do that. That's part of their evil demeanor. Likewise, we can say another indicator of evil is that an individual they don't just hold grudges, but they hold on to hatred and contempt. And often, when they hold on to those kind of emotions, there's no particular reason to feel that way. Sometimes it's just like, I hate you because you're not in my club. I hate you because you don't think like me, but there's no compelling moral reason to think that way. But that's what they do. In addition, we can say another indicator of evil is that person can feel conflicted between being guilty about something versus degrading another person. In other words, well, if I say this or if I do this, I don't know if that'd be right. And if I degrade someone else, I don't know that would be right. But then they choose degradation anyway. It's like, well, even if I might feel guilty, it's not enough. And so that's what I mean when I say that they're aware of a moral code or an ethical code, but they allow themselves to be overridden by the rest of it. In addition, we can say that evil individuals are willing to be cruel and insensitive simply for the sake of proving their superiority. It's like, you want to see who's powerful around here? I'm willing to do that. And they'll do certain things that are gross and negative and damaging to other individuals simply as a way of sending a message, if you know what I'm saying. And then we can also say that in the evilness, these individuals can be very unimpressed by another person's unique needs or struggles or circumstances that might cause them to have some deficiencies. Instead, they think, good, this gives me advantage because now I can know how I can prey upon you. So evil individuals, and you can see how this has a lot of underpinning to the whole concept of narcissism with its need to control, its sensitivity towards others, its superiority. When a person goes into that space, you can see that they have taken the concept of a life well lived and they've turned it upside down. Basically, rather than thinking that a life well lived is built upon concepts like love or shared decency and honor and respect, for them it's like, no, a life well lived is when you're dominant. And then on top of that, they don't want to be accountable, and they also don't particularly have a need for heart connection. That's just where they come from. To give in to evil, let's understand that they illustrate that there's something dreadfully wrong going on inside. I hope that you can understand that when people go into that space, whether it's all the way down to the far extreme or when they just mete out evil in the small doses like I mentioned, basically they've allowed themselves to take a loser's kind of mindset to life. And by that I mean it's like, well, I'm down here in the dregs and I've got all this difficult emotion on the inside. I may as well drag other individuals down. And when I say losers, I don't mean that as a bad name, but what I mean is these people just don't get it. They just don't care, and they don't want to have that uplifting form of life. Also, we can say that people who go into that space are fundamentally unhappy. They're driven by their own sense of despair and pessimism. They have very low, pervasively low self-esteem. Most of them, virtually all of them, have a history of having felt demeaned, but instead of responding to it in healthy kind of ways, they utilize what we refer to as displacement. I have this hurt on the inside of me, but instead of dealing with it, I'm just going to put my hurt onto you. That's what displacement is. Also, these individuals have a lack of future thinking. For example, they don't ask, well, where's this leading to anyway? Or what's the point of all of this? Or what might be the potential fallout for all of us? They don't think that way. They're just in the moment, and it's just like, I've got this raw emotion, I've got this raw desire, and I'm just going to put it out there. And you can see that as a result, they don't trust, they don't make heart connections at all. Pretty despicable, isn't it? And it's pitiable. Now, your task, as you're able to identify the evil that underlies the whole pattern of narcissism, your task is to, frankly, have the least amount of personal engagement that you can with that individual. And frankly, you don't want to reveal much of yourself to that individual. Not that you need to be a closed person, but you have to have a certain amount of judiciousness and discernment about who you're going to share your personal life with. But having said all of that, I'm hoping that you can decide someone in this world needs to choose the better alternative. So I'm hoping that as you see it, establish your boundaries, establish consequences, establish your stipulations, but I'm hoping you can choose to live the high road. The old phrase, don't exchange evil for evil. You don't want to get into that space with them because they'll beat you and then you'll have become a lesser person for that. Instead, choose love, choose decency. Remember our mantra here on Team Healthy, Dr. C, DRC stands for dignity, respect, and civility. Somebody needs to stand for that, and why don't we be the ones that will say, I'm going to respond to that with my own version of what truly a successful life is. Okay, now I know that this is not an easy topic, but I'm hoping that it helps you frame what it is that you might be dealing with. If you've not already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so, and I'll keep more videos coming in your direction. Hit the like button too. If you have a need for therapy, and many times when you have been under the influence of individuals who have given themselves over to this evil dimension, it might be helpful for you to seek out somebody who can help you make sense of that. I'm so pleased to be sponsored by the people at BetterHelp.com. There's a link below, and if that's a need that you would have, I would strongly encourage you to seek that out. Likewise, I have my therapeutic courses. This is like signing up for an online class. It's very extensive, and each class has multiple videos, teaching documents, guided questions. We have Ready, Set, Connect about making good connection skills. This is me about establishing those boundaries, free to be, finding yourself despite the controllers. We also have my webinars, and I take concepts and I present them in a less extensive way than the classes, but nonetheless, they can be helpful to you as well. We have my Surviving Narcissism podcast. We have our website with lots of articles and my books, plenty of resources. Evil is not a word to be thrown about lightly. Like I say, it's a pattern on a spectrum, and I'm hoping you can see that, we all have a capacity for that, but I hope you and I can decide, capacity or no, I'm not going into that space, and when someone comes at you with that, like I say, I hope you have a good definition of who you are so that you stay out of that game entirely. Here on Team Healthy, we're devoted to decency and goodness, and in doing so, I hope that as you take yourself away from evil influences, you can indeed position yourself to remain as a person of peace.